Namaste and welcome. It's Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com. And today we are taking a deeper dive to understand how does the law of karma actually work. Okay, so the previous video was on what is the law of karma. So if you haven't watched that already, I recommend you check that out first and then watch this video. I will link it in the description box below. Okay, now it is said that one of our main aims in life, why we're here, is to balance our karmic accounts. So understanding how this law works is it's really worth taking a deeper look into this, which is why I'm doing this video. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, in order to understand this properly, we are going to need to make one big assumption. Okay, and this assumption is that so you are putting yourself in this story that I'm going to share with you just now, and you're going to assume that you have no previous karma. Okay, so the world has just started and you are one of the first beings living, and you have no past karma. Okay, so you're starting from a fresh, clean slate. Okay, this is important, and then we'll get into how it accumulates and the whole story. Okay, but the important thing to remember is when you're starting, you have no previous karma. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, what I'm sharing with you today, so this is a diagram. It's actually a machine, okay, called the fairness machine, and it is a nice representation from the book Life is Fair, which I mentioned in the previous video. It's by the Radhanath Swami Foundation. Okay, so it's called a fairness machine, and it is one of the best ways I've seen the law of karma, represented visually. Okay, so this is what I'm going to take you through. So this over here is a starting point. Okay, so assuming that you have no previous karma and you are starting your life. Okay, so when you start your life, everything you do is an action, is a karma, right? Blinking is an action, thinking is an action, speaking to somebody is an action. Everything that we do is an action, essentially. Okay, now we know from that book that no action is morally neutral. Every action is either right or wrong. Okay, and right or wrong means, what does that mean, right? So right action is one that takes you closer to spiritual understanding and or improves the welfare of others. Okay, and a wrong action is one that takes you away from spiritual understanding and of course harms the welfare of others, right? So the example that we gave in the previous video was charity being a good action because it makes you feel that we're all one, and of course benefits the benefits the welfare of others, right? And eating meat would be a bad or wrong action because it takes you away from spiritual understanding. It makes you feel that animals are separate from you, that you can eat, kill them and eat them, right? And of course it harms their welfare. So that makes it a wrong action, essentially. So every action is right or wrong, essentially, okay? Now, there's obviously varying degrees for this, but the first thing that happens is this is a free will control panel. So you do an action and it gets filtered. It gets filtered as either a right or a wrong action. Okay, so that's step number one. Now, once it is filtered as right or wrong, the next thing that happens is the intention is looked at. It goes into this thing here called the chute of intention. So along with the action, intention also matters. So for example, you do charity, a good action, okay? But then you go and put it up on Facebook, on social media for other people to see. And you want acknowledgement, right? Either putting it on social media or having your name on a plaque in a temple somewhere to show that, this person donated this amount. So that it becomes a bit more selfish. It's not a totally selfless action. So the intention is looked at, right? So you may have done a good action, a right action, but the intention, there's a bit of selfish motive there. So the brownie points you're going to earn for that from the universe is maybe will be a bit less. Okay, so intention is as important as doing something. So this is why when we do something, we should do it with the right intention, right, and not just do it to show others what we're doing, essentially. Okay, so very simple up till here. First, the action is filtered as a right or wrong action, and then it goes into the chute of intention, and we look at what is looked at is the intention behind the action. Okay, fairly simple. Now that the action has been done, it goes into this wheel of action and reaction, essentially. So every cause has an effect. Every cause has an effect. Every cause has an effect, right? So the action creates a reaction. Now, for most people, our understanding stops over here, right? We feel that I did something and it had a certain reaction, right? We don't think beyond that. And thinking beyond that is where it's the depth of the law of karma really comes. Okay, so what happens beyond this, beyond action and reaction, is that there is a set of consequences. There is a set of consequences that happen. So every action does not have just one reaction. In fact, it's more like a domino. It sets off a chain of different reactions. And these are the consequences that come up from the action that was initially committed. Okay, so for example, let's say that a car manufacturer puts faulty brakes on the cars. Now somebody purchases a car and they're driving, okay, and in traffic they realize that there's no brakes on the car, so there's a huge queue of cars in front of them, and they bang into one car because they can't brake. Okay, so that is the initial action, and the effect of that, right? The effect of that is banging into the second car. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. There is now a chain of consequences that happens. So for example, the car in front hits the car in front of it. Maybe that car hits a bicycle, and there's a kid on the bicycle who falls and breaks his leg. Okay, so initially the action was that faulty brakes on the car, but what this led to was that car hitting the car in front of it, hitting the car in front of it, hitting the bicycle in front of it. The kid falls down, breaks his leg. Okay, so a good lawyer will be able to fight the case that the car manufacturer should pay for all those damages, not just for the initial car that was hit, right? A good lawyer will be able to do that. And the law of karma will actually make you pay in the same way. It will make you pay in the same way because your action did not just have one reaction. It had a whole list of consequences that came with that, right? So there's some good news here. The good news is that if a bad action, a wrong action, has a chain of negative consequences, then a good action also has a chain of negative consequences, positive consequences, which means that you can earn a lot of, compound interest from doing good actions, right? So I'll give you another example. So my fiance's mum, a few years ago, she bought this book for her, Life is Fair, the one that this illustration is from. Okay, so she bought that book for her because my fiance at the time was debating whether to eat meat or to become vegetarian. As a result of reading that book, my fiance decides to turn vegetarian. Okay, so initially that was a good action, buying that book, because that book contains universal truths, right? Spiritual understanding. It will take the person closer to spiritual understanding, right? And my fiance, as a result of reading that book, stopped eating meat. Another good action, right? So buying the book, that initial good action, right? The effect of that was that my fiance read it and she stopped eating meat. Another good action, okay? So there's obviously a whole chain of consequences there, that all the meat that she would have eaten, all the animals that would have been killed because of her in the past few years have not been killed, right? Or basically they have not been harmed because of her demand. Make sense? But there's another chain. The other chain is that I turn up at their house, okay, and I see this book on the shelf and I want to read it. So I pick the book up, I read the book, and I'm so fascinated by the concepts in there that I decide to do this video on how the law of karma works, right? Now, I've done this video, and as the years pass, many of you will watch this video, and some of you may be inspired to actually do good actions as a result of watching this video, right? Because you've understood how the law of karma works. So just from that initial action of buying this book for somebody selflessly, animals have been saved, right? I've done this video. Other people in the world have started doing good actions because of it. Do you see that huge chain of consequences, positive consequences as the result of one good action, right? Imagine the person who wrote the book, right? Imagine how much good karma they're incurring, right? Because the whole purpose of writing the book was to spread this message of how this law works and how we can live with more kindness, essentially, right? So this is the thing, right? The actions don't have just one reaction. They have a whole consequence of reactions. And this is where the potential of karma is huge. The potential of karma is huge. So the Dalai Lama says that the potential of karma always increases over time. One good action right now can lead to a lot of good later on. Okay, so this is very good news, because what happens is that, okay, let's go back to this step by step. Okay, so you do an action, right or wrong. From right or wrong, the intention is looked at. What is the intention behind the action? Now this action goes into the wheels, and all the consequences spin out of there. Okay, now what you'll notice is that there are so many consequences from one action that we're not able to either pay or be repaid all of them in one lifetime. It's just not enough, right? So for example, let's say there is a serial killer that kills 12 people, okay? And he's caught and he's sentenced to life in prison and, the word's not coming to me, death. He's sentenced to death and life in prison, okay? But that would be the same sentence if he had just killed one person, right? So the other 11 lives that he has taken, he's not paid for them in this lifetime. So he will have to come back in other lifetimes and pay for that, right? So often we're not able to, often or most of the time, because there's so many consequences of our actions, we are not able to pay for all of them in this lifetime. And this is where this chute of consequences comes, and it basically, the consequences pour into this store over here. So this is the bin of consequences, okay? And this is the store of our karma, the store of our karma. So when we start our next life, we're not starting fresh on a clean slate. We're not starting fresh on a clean slate because we have so many consequences of our previous karma, our previous action, that either have to be paid off or have to be repaid to us, right? So either, it's like you've taken a loan from a bank, and every time you get paid, you have to essentially, you're paying interest, right? So from the salary that you're getting, there's so many interest payments, loan repayments to be paid out, that there's very little left for you. There's very little left for you to actually spend, right? So this is how, think of all the lives that we've lived, all the action, all the karma we've done and accumulated, good and bad, right? Think of all this we've accumulated, that now, this is why, like, our lives are almost predestined. They're almost predestined, right? Because you're coming into life, right, with this store of your previous life's karma. And this is why you have people being born in different situations. One person is born in very dire, poor circumstances, and somebody else in very fortunate circumstances. So what did they do to be in that situation? Nothing in that lifetime, right? Nothing in that lifetime, but it is the accumulation of the previous karmas that gives them that start, whether it's good or bad, essentially. And I appreciate, this is a hard truth to understand. Many people don't like to accept it or to speak about it, but it's not to be taken in a bad way, right? It means that you are in control. You are in control of your destiny, no matter what you start with, right? So we have no control over our previous life or even yesterday. But what we have control over is now, because we know that if we are doing right action with right intention, continuously, then the consequences of that will create a beautiful reality for us. The consequences of that will create a beautiful reality for us. Yes, it may take some time, right? Yes, it may take some time, but so what? It means you are in control. It means you are in control. Okay, so this is why it is really important that whatever free will we do have, right? Whatever free will we do have, it's important to use it correctly, right? So for example, the example of the loans that you have to pay. So let's say, you get a salary every month, and every dollar or pound of that salary is just earmarked for paying bills, for paying debt, for paying bills. There's nothing really left over for you at the end of it. Now, one fine day, you find that you have some surplus cash. You have some surplus cash, right? Now, what you do with that will determine your future, right? So if you just take it and blow it, then that's it. You run out of that. And then you're just continuing that cycle of action, reaction, action, reaction. Money comes, pay the bills. Money comes, pay the bills, okay? But if you are smart, if you are conscious, if you are mindful, and you take that little extra money you have and you put it in a savings account, right? Over time, through earning interest and through earning compound interest, that money will grow, will grow, will grow. So you may not have anything, immediately, but in the future, you will have surplus cash and you will have the ability to spend it how you want, to make the reality you want, right? That is essentially an example of what doing good action, good karma can do for you, okay? So to summarize, the only thing that you need to know is that you are in control. You are in control, right? It may not seem that way because you have a lot of past stored karma, good or bad, which is creating certain circumstances in your life right now. But ultimately, you are in control. And this is where it's important that we learn to break the cycle. We learn to break the cycle, right? Because let's say there's two people standing here, each one is slapping the other, right? So one slaps the other one slaps him back. This one slaps him, the other one slaps him back. It's a continual chain of action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. So our job is to be mindful, to be conscious, to take a step back and try to essentially break that cycle. We break that cycle, right? This is where practices like meditation will help, because they help you detach and not be in a reactive mode, right? So if someone's getting angry at you, if you are angry at them back and you swear at them and you hurt them, then that is a wrong action ultimately, right? But if you have the detachment, if you have that distance and the ability to think and say, no, I want to act from kindness, then we can do that, right? This is why, the whole practice, the entire yogic system, look at Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, right? They start with the yamas and the niyams. What are the yamas? Non-violence, don't harm, don't steal, don't kill, don't lie, don't hoard, all these things. So essentially what it's saying is live in a way that is, improving the welfare of others, right? And then you have, meditation, svadhyaya, self-study, studying the scriptures. Do things, meditation, reading, books like the Bhagavad Gita, right? Like the Yoga Sutras, that improve your spiritual understanding. These are all good actions, ultimately. This is why the entire system has been designed that way, right? Now, the ultimate goal is to not even be in the cycle of karma, of action and reaction, right? We are in this cycle because we are operating from the mental level, right? When you ascend to more spiritual states of consciousness, then the law of karma doesn't operate there. It operates in the lower levels, right? But that's a topic for another another video. But ultimately, this is the whole thing, right? So I hope this makes sense. I hope if you take away anything from this video, it's the fact that you have control over how your destiny shapes out, okay? And do not underestimate the power of a good action, because it's not just one action. It's not just one action. It is a domino. You do one good thing and that leads to a chain reaction out there in the world. And just like compound interest, you will always be earning the merits of that good action. So that is it, okay? I really hope that makes sense. I really hope you enjoyed this and use it in your life. Thank you very much for listening. Namaste.